Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the updates 1.95 dev server and it's time to have a look at a new Swedish vehicle. This is the top tier vehicle for the Swedish aviation tree and it's the J32B. Now there is some little blue that you can see off of it. That's because for some reason on the dev server my sun is blue. So that is why you can see that. That's a little graphical glitch, so don't worry about that. That's only on my end. So this is a rank 6 battle rating 9 vehicle and you can find it at the end of the tech tree right here. It is not a supersonic vehicle, but it's very close to Mach 1, and overall it should be a pretty fun vehicle to use. At 9.0, it gets access to some pretty cool armaments. So first of all, it gets access to 4 30mm Akans. Now these Akans are just Aidens. They're made by the British company which produces Aidens, and they're exactly the same. They have 90 rounds of ammunition each, 360 overall, so not a ton of ammunition, but enough to be able to put a decent dent in a few aircraft. It also has these wonderful fuel tanks all the way down, and when it comes to secondary armaments, this is where it gets interesting. So most 9.0, even a lot of 8.7 vehicles nowadays, have access to some pretty cool secondary armaments in the form of air-to-air missiles. The J32B is no different. What you get out of this machine is, first of all, 38 rockets, but they only pen 13mm because these are designed as air-to-air rockets, and then you have access to 4 RB-24s. An RB-24 is an AIM-9B Sidewinder, so this is, basically the Swedish name for an AIM-9B. They really liked using their own names for stuff instead of other countries. Then you have a mixture, so you have the 38 rockets alongside the 2 RB-24 air-to-air missiles. Now, for me, I've got a feeling that the majority of people are just going to take the 4 air-to-airs just because it's going to be much more useful than having these rockets, but we're going to have to see whether they in-game have a proximity shell, a proximity fuse, or if they have something else hidden which will make them fun in the future. So armament aside, of course, the air-to-airs, they have a 6G overload, so they're not that useful, but they'll make somebody turn, and then you finish them off with the Akans. This machine has the Svenska Flygmotor RM6A jet engine, and it has 4680 kgf with a takeoff thrust of 5616. This actually has what seems to be an afterburner attached to it, and I'll show you that in the test drive, I'll show you it in the test drive right now, instead of just, dilly-dallying about, just to try and show you this machine in all of its glory. So you can see that at 0 degrees, obviously there is no flame, but at war emergency power, there is the flame. So this definitely seems to have some form of afterburner with it, even though it still is it isn't a supersonic machine. Instead, it's a little bit lower than that. It also has 2 pilots, which is kind of nice. So this basically means that with the 2 pilots, if one gets knocked out, you'll still be able to fly the machine, very similar to a lot of bombers out there which have 2 pilots. The B-17 comes to mind, and also some German machines as well. It's made out of fuel tanks, of course, being a jet, that's pretty much the majority of the skeleton of it, and armor-wise, it does actually have a decent amount. It has 50mm, which protects the front pilots, then 10mm between the pilots, 5mm at the bottom, and 15 there as well. Overall, I think that's enough armor to justify maybe some head-ons, especially when you've got 30mm Aidens, and at 9.0, you're pretty much at that really nice BR where you're going to get downed into a lot of 8.7s, so this may become top dog pretty quickly when it comes to its guns, and also when it comes to its general weaponry. The other thing as well is it of course has the standard set of modifications for most jets, very sparse, so therefore it's going to take a while to get each of these upgrades, and since this machine is the highest, this on the dev server right now is sat at 390,000 RP, so it's going to take you a long while to grind this out, but at least you have a bunch of J29s which you can use to grind it out, which either you're going to like it or you're going to hate it. It's as simple as that. So with the J32B, there is no access to secondary camouflages. What you see is what you get, and then with the test flights and the mission editor, I should actually have a look at the the Akans primary weapons, where it has access to default belts of APHEIT, targets of Heavy T, then of course AP HIT, AP, and then stealth. I personally go for air targets just because I want to do as much damage as possible, increase that burst mass as much as I can to annihilate whatever is on the other side of what I'm firing at. So that's basically why I've decided to do that. At the same time as well, for me, when I've had a look at this machine in general, it does look pretty nice when it comes to its flight characteristics. I've generally, flown it around a decent amount so far, and I've had a lot of fun with it. The only problems I've had is the fact that, its acceleration isn't exactly fully there compared to other vehicles, but I think that's completely fine. It's something that can be sorted out, especially since the turn on this machine seems to be pretty good. So let's just take off and try and proceed to target. And by acceleration, what I'm basically saying is compare the takeoff of this to a bunch of other machines that you've seen. It also doesn't have a full cockpit yet, so it has like this weird cockpit. And look how low, by the way, the guy is sat. It has an open and closed cockpit, but not a fully done one. I feel like, at least when it comes to this machine, that one of the big issues, I'm just checking the recording there, one of the issues with the cockpits is the pilot is sat way too low. So if this is where he's supposed to be sat, I feel really bad for his frontal visibility, because it's really not very good on this machine at all. So that is definitely something to worry about. But overall speed, there's the sun again, the wonderful blue wonder. But you can see it definitely climbs at a good tick. We're at 20 degrees right now and not really breaking a sweat at all for this machine. But it just isn't as powerful as some of the other machines that we see around the 9.0 to 10.0 BR. And that is the one which, for me, is the interesting thing. How is this going to fit within that BR? We've seen a big push towards machines which are either really good at accelerating or really good at maneuvering, or just both in general. And for me, when I think about this machine, I see its maneuverability and I'm happy with it. I don't think it's anything special, but it's nice. I see its acceleration, I'm happy with it, but it's nothing special. And then I look at all of the super accelerating machines and just think, is this going to be able to compete with them? And with this cockpit, definitely not. But with other factors, such as the Afterburner, which is involved, such as its frontal guns and also its air-to-airs, I do think there is definitely a chance for this machine to be incredibly useful on the battlefield. You can see we haven't really broken a sweat going up to 0.93 Mach. It's not exactly hard for us to do. And it reminds me very much of like the Swift, where the Swift has really good acceleration up to a point, and it kind of loses some of its acceleration, and then it kind of gains it back later on when it gets to higher speeds. My feeling is that this vehicle is very similar to that, and yes, I'm running with a crew which is really not very good right now, but I just want to show you how far you can push this thing to its limits. Right now, we're going casually over 1,000 kilometers an hour, and nothing is, really bothering with it. There's no way that this missile hits, even if it tags on, and I've hit the wrong button, so that definitely doesn't help. But you can see that you can target from a pretty far ways away with this, but since it's an AIM-9B, if they're turning at all, it's never going in. The pull is pretty good on this machine. It can pull up to 10 Gs, which some machines are not able to. But with the way that the wings are structured, it is able to cut through the air pretty nicely. Let's just see if we can set up once again. So we get a lock at 2.7, but I don't think that missile is going to fly through and actually do any damage to that 262. It is nice to know that you can lock on from that, especially with these 262s, but you can see the destructive power of the Akan, which is just amazing. Let's just see if we can set this up. God, there's so many dots around the screen, so many 262s to eat. But I definitely think, with the fact that it doesn't have AIM-9Es or Ds or Ls, the AIM-9Bs that it has are just going to be used to try and get somebody to maneuver, and then you can use the acceleration of this machine or the maneuverability of it to be able to get an advantage over your opponent in the form of in the form of trying to get onto them and burning their speed. For me, M9Bs have always been that, and to see them basically going to be used in that way with this machine doesn't really surprise me. You can see how easy it is just to annihilate aircraft with these things. I personally think these guns are some of the best in the game. I know a lot of people like the MG151s, but for me it's these and the ANM2s from the Americans. Both of them are incredibly good on their given day, but you can see that we are slowly but surely burning through ammo after a few bursts. So you are going to have to be quite accurate with them, but with the high muzzle velocity that is coming out of the cannon, it's not too hard to do. And with the fact that, you know, you are going to be technically right now at the top of a BR bracket, you may also have a few more opportunities to be able to use the guns which you normally wouldn't be afforded. I think this plane will do exceptionally well against planes which are below it. There are some machines which actually don't do too well in a down tier, but do pretty well in an up tier, weirdly enough. This machine for me is one of those machines which is going to do pretty well in a down tier, pretty well at its tier, but the problem it will have is the general issue that a lot of these jets have, where there is a very, very obvious divide between 8790s and then above, where the acceleration or the air-to-air missile factor really kicks in. Like, there is nothing from this machine that I see from it that would give me an advantage over the machines which are higher than it. I suppose the only thing that may be there is turn rate, but even then, there are plenty of machines which have a better turn rate than this at higher BRs. So I don't really understand where this is going to fit in on everything. Maybe at the end of the day, we're going to have a machine in the form of this, which is just kind of a middling machine. It also means that we can look forward to other machines, obviously the Viggen and the Draken. They've been talked about on the dev stream, and yes, they will eventually come, alongside, I'm sure, many different vehicles as well. But the other thing to also understand is, I think this is a good start for Sweden. Just looking at the tree generally overall, I personally am happy to see what I've seen. I think, it's a good start. Is it a complete, tree yet? Definitely not. I would actually even hesitate to say there are some vehicles, there's no way that hurts. I would even hesitate to say that there are some vehicles which are missing out of this tech tree, which may even come this update. Another thing is it has a pretty cool air brake. You see that? Kind of like very Swedish in style, where it has the little teeth which come out of the side, and they do slow you down a decent amount. It's nothing crazy, but it is good enough. And I do like the general design of it. But you can see pulling 8Gs with ease. It's also able to pull 10 with ease as long as your pilot can handle it. And yeah, the turning circle isn't the best, but we are going pretty decently fast. I'm kind of worried about this thing against stuff like Sabres and G91s. Those were always the vehicles that I struggled against because of their acceleration out of the turn. And I'm just hoping that this machine does have that acceleration out of the turn, so it's able to deal with those vehicles. It also has bottom-mounted guns, so convergence you don't really have to worry about. Instead, you can just worry about lining up the target and shooting him and taking him out. Should be very, very easy to do with the 430s that this thing has. Anyway, that's a look at the top tier vehicle that the Swedish have access to. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyins Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.